Good afternoon, and welcome to the maiden voyage of a new series on overcoming adversity called Angels in Hell. I hear myself speaking over myself. Do you hear that, Aliza?
I do not.
Oh
You
boy,
sound
that's
fine to me. I'm sorry that you're hearing that feedback.
okay. So the back end people, sorry, but I hear myself double. I'll try to go over it, but let's see.
Maybe if you take out your headphones and just use the speaker of the.
Okay, I think I solved it. Okay, sorry for the stumble there, folks. Welcome, and Aliza Bulow, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be speaking with you again. How are things in Denver? How's the weather?
It's beautiful today, a little overcast, but I think what's overcast more in Denver today is that people are seeking rides to Boulder, sharing rides to Boulder for the Run for Their Lives March in Boulder. Since last week there was the terror attack, and this week I think people are joining in solidarity. So there's that sense of overcast as well today in Denver.
That's a good way to set up our discussion for today. And yeah, I hadn't thought to bring that up, but obviously that's a salient point. We're here to discuss people going through difficult circumstances, and tools and attitudes to help get through extremely difficult times. And you and I have a mutual friend who was the inspiration for this entire series. By the way, if you go into the YouTube link, or you'll see scrolled across the screen here, there is a fundraiser going on for this person. And I just wanted to tell a little story about how this got named. Actually, she wrote this story, and it goes a little something like this. She was in the Denver airport, which I've been to. I'm sure you've been to many times. And she was really sick, so sick that she couldn't stand, and they actually had to bring a folding chair over. Oh, lo and behold, the electricity goes off in the Denver airport, and there's like chaos. And there's this line of bustling, angry people is building, and her arm is in horrific pain, and she can't function so well. They fix the electricity after time, and now people start running for the train, to get to their gate, and they're jostling her, and she's really distressed and starts crying, and is trying to protect her arm and whatnot. And out of the blue comes four Hell's Angels, four bikers, and they lift her up and carry her, protecting her the whole way to her gate.
Wow.
Yeah, unexpected, but okay. So this is something that she wrote about it, and that we'll use this as the launching pad to get into your story. But they said to her, "What gate, sweetheart?" They held on to me as the train made stops, as people pushed on. I let myself cry. They told me it would be okay. I knew in the depths of my shattered body and soul nothing would ever be okay again, but in that moment I believed them. They had me. When the train stopped at B, half of the people pushed on and half pushed off, and the doors started to close. They somehow parted the path like Moses in the waters and carried me off. They found an airport employee who said he would get me to my gate. They hugged me. I didn't want to let go, and then they were gone, like Elijah the prophet. I didn't even see which way they walked. I'm sure they ascended back to heaven on fiery, growling, beautiful Harleys. I will never get to thank my Hell's Angels again, but that is part of this story. The angels who appear literally and metaphorically from hell. So that's where we get the series title, Angels in Hell, right? And what we're interested in pulling out for people is what happens in these dire, emotionally scarring situations. Like, is there actually silver linings in these clouds? What do they look like? How do you identify them? And can we be inspired by people who have gone through the worst possible experiences, I think that most of us probably live in daily fear of actually happen to you, and to others, and therefore learning from you and your experience is extremely valuable. So that's why we're here. So I'd like to ask you if you could explain to the folks watching a little bit about what happened with your son, and we'll get into what you learned from it afterwards.
Okay. Well, Donnie, it was his yard site actually on Friday. So I feel like I'm just coming off the heels of that time. Not yet exhaling probably to the end of this podcast episode, because there is a big exhale at the end of the yard site. He was number 6 of the children, the baby of the family, beautiful golden haired prince, dream child of everyone, loving him, caring for him, being the most delicious of the children that everyone could just, he was so yummy, and challenging, both. And first he was just so yummy, but as he grew, his questions grew, and his pushing the envelope grew, and his patience grew thinner, and his need to know grew more, and his need to test grew more. And he was clearly brilliant, clearly struggled with authority and following directions, and yet was able to do very complicated, intricate things on his own, but not if you told him to. And that built and built. And I just wasn't sure what, I mean, here I was the mother of 6, and I had kids with some other issues, whether they're emotional issues or learning issues or whatever, but I just felt like he was a question mark, wrapped in an enigma, tied up in a mystery, and I could not figure him out, with everything that I had from the other kids. It was a constant learning with him, and constant questioning with him, and constant putting me on the rocks all the time. Along with the other kids, but they prepared me for him with it. Each little trial that they had gave me a bucket of tools, none of which worked for him, except for the patience that I developed through all the other kids, patience and process. And he was suicidal from a very young age. He really started talking around age 5 about not wanting to be in the world. And I don't think he didn't fully understand what that was, but we lived near the ocean at that time in Long Beach, Long Island, and he would tell me that he just wants to walk into the ocean and keep on going, or just walk into traffic. Like, he had not just like the desire to not be here, but he had some suicidal, like how to make that happen from a very early age. And we talked about it regularly, unfortunately, but I'm an open, I mean, I was there for him. Like, I wouldn't shut him down and say, oh, don't talk like that. I mean, maybe I probably did. Or why would you say such a thing, in the very beginning? But as it became part of the fabric of his life and our lives together, it became part of our conversation, the family conversation, mostly mine, because I'm the mother. So that's the one who carries these, if she chooses to carry this, which I did, and had those conversations with him at length, about life, about why it's worth it, etc. But eventually, just to make that long story short, he did end up dying by suicide, at 19 and 3 months. So I really thought about how he was in my life for 20 full years, because 9 months of pregnancy, and he died at 19 and 3 months. So I had him for 20 years.
Was there like an impending sense of panic when he started
Not panic. So it's interesting, because everybody talks about the suicide, but the suicide wasn't that was a very sad part, but it wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was raising him. Raising a mentally ill child is grueling. It's grueling, and it's petrifying. And it's petrifying, and it's lonely. And it's lonely because nobody else knows what you're doing, and all the advice other people give you is so hollow and shallow. Set limits. Why do you advocate for him so much? Who says you need to discipline him better? He needs to whatever, all that stuff, and nobody's there with compassion. Like, if I had a child with cancer and he needed to be hospitalized, people would say, oh, can we make dinner for your family? What help do you need? Let me do carpool for you. Not this. This is, okay, how do you bring a sobbing child to school because he needs to go there, but he doesn't want to be there? and drag him in and somehow convince him to stay in the building, knowing this is a terrible idea. How am I bringing a child who desperately doesn't want to be in a building with people who really don't want to be around him, and he doesn't want to be around them, and leaving him there because of what? So it's lonely, and then you're judged, and you feel judged, and you feel like, what kind of a parent am I? And other people are asking the same questions. What kind of a parent is she? And the loneliness of that, it is so hard. I mean, I one time went to a bar mitzvah of a Down syndrome child, and the news was there covering it. It was a beautiful simcha, 400 people, and they videoed him making a bracha that you could understand if you understood the way he spoke. And everybody's siman tov u'mazal tov. It was beautiful, congratulating him. And I was thinking to myself, if I get my child to live until he's 13, it's going to be the biggest simcha, and nobody's going to say mazel tov. Nobody. They'll just look at me and say, why didn't he lay in the whole parsha? Or why didn't he make
What does that mean?
Why didn't he read the entire Torah portion at his bar mitzvah in the synagogue? Why didn't you train him for that? You know, like if I would get him to go into the synagogue just to say a bracha on the Torah,
A blessing, yeah.
just to say the blessing on the Torah reading, that would have been a triumph. But I knew that, I mean, I just felt standing there at that simcha, watching everyone tear up, watching this child make a bracha and feeling the joy of it. I just felt like the doom of living in a cave of judgment, of like, if I would get my child to that place, people would just look down on me, you know, and say, wow, that's all you could do. That's it. He made a blessing. It's so hard having a child with a hidden disability like that nobody knows that you live with.
That opens up a whole different can of societal worms, you know, in terms of why is it still that mental health is not considered a health problem in the same way that other challenges are. I was under the impression that was improving. I don't know if you think that that's the case.
I think it is. I think people talk about it more. I think social media has helped people talk about it more. There's more vulnerability about it. I don't think we fully have it yet. Even the fact that we call it mental health or mental illness is interesting, because we don't talk about body health or body illness. You know, like if somebody has a disease, so then they have cancer of the brain or of the breast, or they have diabetes, which is the pancreas that doesn't, and they know what to do about it. Mental health is just a blob of brain that's not working somewhere, and we're not sure what it is. Is that ADHD? Is that mental health or not? Is that bipolar disorder? Is that, like, what's going on? Is that borderline? Is that what is it? Is that anxiety? We have an explosion in anxiety today, an instability that so many people are feeling, and so many people live inside. I think there's a collective mental health also, but we don't even have the right language to talk about it, let alone any treatments. And I feel like in the medical journey that I went on with my son, going from doctor to doctor, I really felt like we were in a stage of like leeches, you know, like what physical health was with leeches. Like the doctor just takes out a jar and says, here, try one of these. Let's see if it sticks. And let's see if it helps him or kills him. We'll know in a few months, you know. So
let's go back for a second to your slog through this process. What are you doing to, well, you've outlined a lot of hell, right? Were there any bright spots in there? Was it just dark? Was there some figure who showed up and helped in some significant way? Was there some realization that you had that was very edifying for you at that time? A book, a video, anything that was like helping you to moderate this?
Absolutely. Many people, tools, books, ideas, classes. I mean, it took a lot to go through all this. But I would say, was it hell? Yes, there were certainly elements that were excruciatingly painful. And also, I think the first realization for me was, what is a nisayon? What is a test? What does that mean? You know, Jewishly, we talk about being tested, and do we pass or fail? Is that a thing? Are tests pass, fail in Judaism? What is that? So I had to learn a lot more about what a test is. And as I came to understand that a test really is about bringing out latent potential in a person, it's not about passing or fail. God doesn't need to know if we could. Could we make it up the mountain and kill our child, Abraham? Could he do it? Did God need to know that? Or did God need to help Abraham know that? So once I understood that really what a test is about is saying, okay, I see a lot of potential in you, God talking to the person, right? And I'd like to call it forth. And so therefore I'm signing you up for a workshop. And sometimes he shows us the curriculum of the workshop and we look at it and we're like, I skip, pass. And Hashem says, guess what? And he gives you a push from behind. And you feel like you're falling into the great crevasse of workshop plunge where there's just big jagged rocks at the bottom. But like in the cartoons, with Wile E. Coyote and he's falling, but somehow you can be born aloft. Sometimes you crash and you're all bloody. And yet there's so much to learn each time. And I did learn that it's really not about a pass or a fail. And it's about who I become through the whole process. So that's what this earth is. It's about walking in one way and walking out another. And it's the walking through that is transformative. And that's all I have to do is walk through. And that's, for me, that was so helpful just to know, okay, I could steel myself for this because, I don't have to triumph. I have to walk through. And Hashem totally chose this exactly for me at my level. And now I just have to walk through it. So I did that again and again.
So I think your average parent is so totally unwilling to entertain what happened to you as a possibility. Like it's the stuff of nightmares, literally, right?
Yeah.
And no matter what the payoff is in their mind, no matter how they
It's not about the payoff. Let me cut you off. So first of all, the average parent didn't lose a child. So obviously they can't understand this. That's the whole point. The whole point is everybody goes through their stuff to become who they're supposed to be. It's not like I said, I want to be a great Torah teacher, and therefore I am willing to sacrifice my child on the altar of mental health so that I can learn the Torah lessons that are necessary for me to teach them to the world. Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. It's not that. But Hashem might have said that. And it's not just about that either. So I have a concept with my own language, a chesed puller, a kindness puller, somebody who pulls kindness from others. So we also had a grandson who was very sick. And he died after a year of a lot of pulling chesed out of others. Because you could wonder, why? Why should God bring a child into the world just that he should suffer and die? And which is what happened to this grandchild. I mean, he was 1 year old. He didn't have a good day in his life. Not one. He just suffered and died. Donnie, our son, who is 19 and 3 months, he had a lot of good days and a lot of hard days. We had a lot of good days, a lot of wonderful, fabulous times. We would never trade his life, not for a minute. If we could give up all the sorrow, we wouldn't trade away. Like it was worth it to have him. He was fabulous. But this poor baby, Moshe, he suffered and suffered. But what did he do? He pulled a lot of chesed out of a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Now, did the parents agree to hold this child, this neshama in the world so that others may grow in their chesed? Who knows? We don't know about the spiritual signups for things like that. But we do know that Hashem decided that people have to grow in their chesed, and in their kindness, in their everything. And in order for that to happen, there has to be somebody who needs it. So Hashem has an amazing balance of people who have and people who need. And all of us have, and all of us need, and all in different measures. And we're an ecosystem of people who live together, and each person is an opportunity to give to and to receive from. And we all need it. There's no question. That's why we're in a relationship with each other, whether they're family members or friends or friendlies or podcast listeners. Really, we all have something. And I'll promise you that I'm going to get some note. You'll get some note from this that will shift a perspective. That's a gift from somebody who's listening to this, who will give to us. And we're giving to them something that's important. And sometimes it's very big, a neighbor who really does carry you through, a big person in your life. There's a big angel. And then there's your medium angels, your instant appear and disappear ones in the airport or in a hospital. right? And then there's your like just like little glimmers, or even on a page in a magazine that you flip over and you're like, oh, right. And you see a quote that's helpful for you, like just the tiniest little thing. So there's all kinds of appearances of flickers of light, but one also has to attune themselves to seeing it, which I think is also a gift that I got out of this whole thing.
What when you look at other people in in comparatively easier circumstances, let's say, seemingly everyone's got their stuff, right? But we usually have objective standards by which to say, this occurrence seems much worse than this occurrence. Forgiving however people experience their own stuff, right? When you look at people who are complaining about the duration of a flight, or whether or not the waiter brought their food fast enough, or stuff that people have a lot of complaints. How do you relate differently to those people? Like at this point, do you want to say anything to them when you encounter them? Just curious, like how your experience is applicable to folks that you encounter now.
Right. So I have learned that everybody can only grow at the place where they are. And I've also learned, and it's really hard because I'm still learning this lesson, to only give advice when asked, because that's the only time it really could be heard. And sometimes I might offer, like, would you like me to share something with you? But if not, not. But one tool that I have, and sometimes I share it with people, which can be used in small and huge ways, is skip step 2. So step 1, something hard happens. Step 2, you get upset about it. Step 3, you deal with it, right? So step 2 is always in your control, always. Step 1, not in your control. Your kid borrows your car and they dent it, right? Okay, so now you get to choose. Now you're mad, right? You shouldn't have taken my car. I never gave you permission to take my car. Who said you could? And now look what you did, and you don't even have the money in your bank account for that, and neither do I, and I don't want to have to fund your irresponsibility, etc. Right? You can do all that. And then the car has to get fixed, right? And you have to deal with it, right? So now it's in that middle space that you have all the choice. So I would say to myself, why should I have a dented car and a dented relationship? I anyway have a dented car. I anyway have to figure out how to fix it. So let me do that without denting the relationship, both for myself or with the others. That's what vis-a-vis another. But let's say I missed a flight, right? So I could say to myself, you are so ridiculous. I can't believe, to myself, right? You spent that extra time doing whatever instead of just getting out the door when you knew you were tight on your flight. And like, so you could really like step 2 all over yourself, right? Instead of just saying, okay, you have to now figure it out. How are you going to take the next flight? Whether you're upset or not, you have to pay the $300 flight change fee. So why do you also have to be upset about the fact that you're losing money? Just like say, okay, learn a lesson, call it tuition to the school of life, take the lesson out of that, and then move on. And why? So I have worked a lot I try not to control my emotions that way, not to stuff them down, but to channel them, to say, what am I doing here? Am I in step 2? Like, I don't need to be in step 2. Let me skip this part. Right? I don't need to be angry at the other person. I don't need to be dissing them. I don't need to be condescending. I don't need to be upset with myself. I can skip step 2 and go straight to step 3, which is handle the situation. So
that would be a great book title, by the way.
Skip step 2.
Yeah, I mean, Mel Robbins has made entire books about things that are less insightful. Yeah, she's great, but like counting backwards from 5, she made a whole career off of that. Right. Just putting it out there in case you want to.
Someday. I mean, it's such a helpful tool, and it's helped in so many places. Sometimes people go into step 2 before step 1 even happens. Like when they're stuck in traffic before they're at that flight. They didn't even miss their flight yet, and they're already recriminating. Like, really?
So I'm glad you focused me on the process as opposed to the outcome of your story. But I just want to ask you about the outcome for a moment. Yeah. By using 2 famous biblical stories about loss of a child, right? And comparing them and seeing what you think. So the first one is a very famous one from King David, who lost his son Absalom as he's called in English, who was not a good son to him at all. And nonetheless, when he lost him, I have the quote here. It says, "The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, 'Oh, my son Absalom, oh, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you, oh, Absalom, my son, my son.'"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the king is very upset, right? And understandably, and he's being very emotive about it, right? And then we contrast that with Aaron, the high priest, who loses two children at the same time. And the verse says, "Vayidom Aron and Aaron remained silent." And he seems to get a lot of credit for that in our way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, I can't imagine you were totally surprised what happened at the end. What was your immediate reaction? Was it more like David or Aaron? And what does it mean? What?
That's a fabulous question. So let me first say there's the process of raising the mentally ill child and then the suicide. But the suicide is a one-time happen. You can only die once, and it doesn't take that long, right? So it takes a long time to live. But the death is really the fulcrum of the shift of the energy in the life, let's just call it, of the parent here, of my life, right? So there's the energy of trying to keep the child alive and living with the child until the moment of death. And then because I sort of did view him like, like somebody with an illness that would likely die from it, that I hoped he wouldn't, sort of like cancer. I really felt like it was sort of like somebody with a very aggressive cancer, where I really hoped that a cure would come before he succumbed, and looked for cures before he succumbed. And so my life was about, of course, parenting the rest of the family, but also him, and then really hoping for a cure before he succumbed to his illness. And then also wondering, but also rehearsing, what might his death be like? Like, of course I thought about it. Like, he's got a fatal disease here, so what will it be like when he dies? And in our final conversations, like the few months leading up to it, like really was like, why should I live? And the despair that he had about what the purpose of the world should be. And we really came down to, like, he said, so you're basically asking me to live a life of pain to spare you the pain of burying me? And so I said, yes. Yes, I am. I'm asking you to live a life of pain so that I won't have to have the pain of losing my child. But even though I said yes, like, who could really say yes with a full heart? And yes, yet I did. But like, when he put it that way, so I realized that every parent, I think many parents would trade away their own comfort for their child's comfort. And that's what happened at his death. He was out of pain and I was in it. And so there was that King David feeling of crying for his death. I wasn't shocked, certainly. I think other people in the family were, because they were in more denial than I was. I had more of the conversations with him, but I knew at some point, I didn't know when. It was surprising in the moment, but because I, it was not like he heaved a last breath, that I was, that he was the intensive care thing. Like I expected, like hoped that he would still survive this whole thing. But there was definitely the sense of the emotional pain that I didn't expect that level, because I had lived with so much emotional pain over probably losing him for so long that I was surprised at the pain on the other side, having lost him. The Vayidom Aron I also relate to, because let's set aside Aaron's silence, which is appropriate in the moment. He couldn't have expressed it at the time, but it's not like he was silent for life. The Chumash, the Bible, just records his silence in the moment, because in the moment it was the appropriate reaction vis-a-vis the entire process of the setting up the holy place that they were ministering within. And it wasn't a place for him to bring his pathos into. It wasn't about him. So it just was, he was silent and he took back. But I also learned that with suicide and other traumatic deaths, but certainly with suicide, that the first year of mourning can be called the freeze, and the second year of mourning is the thaw. and that the freeze is necessary just so that you can breathe and function, so that you could shower and eat. Because you can't, if you feel the weight of all the emotions, you can't. You have to go into a vayidom. Like there could be the smallest little cry and then the biggest, huge silence, just so you could function. And the second year, you can first start to feel some of those. But I'll tell you now in year 12, entering year 13 right now, right, is that it's still a steady stream of defrost.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's new feelings that come and new understandings that come in smaller bites where you could digest them and feel them. So, because it would be way too overwhelming to have to feel it all at once. And also, I will say, maybe a downside of skip step 2, and maybe not, and maybe it's not related to that at all, but maybe it's just what I had to do to be able to function in a world with a child who was so on the edge. I probably did learn to cut off the edges of my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go as low and I don't go as high. I have lots of space inside a nice middle bandwidth. So I do have joy and I do have sorrow, but the depths of sorrow, I felt it already, and who needs more of that?
Mm-hmm.
And the height of joy, like, okay, whatever. There's great things in the world, but I don't need to, like, I never like scream or get excited about anything really, because I'm so grateful for things. And even my gratefulness, that's where I go into much more vayidom, much more inside. People ask me sometimes when I talk about this kind of thing, you don't mind your whole life is exposed like this? I'm like, my whole life? You think I'm telling you my whole life? Absolutely not. This is like the tiniest little top. I have a whole life inside, like I'm showing the tip of the iceberg, but there is a big iceberg in there and you don't know it. But there's a lot going on inside.
So that's a good answer. Someone watching posed the question, where in yourself did you find the strength? And there you go. And I was going to ask, the way I was going to phrase it is, what got you through? And you and I were discussing earlier, I know at least one tool that is a little counterintuitive, which is that of finding humor somehow in all this. But how would you answer the question? Like what?
Okay, so the where in myself, I would say is there are many different places inside myself, but I had to build them. So I would say one key place that I started out very early is, and I really did respond to a lot of different layers of understanding in the morning blessings. There's a whole list of, I don't know how many there are, like 14 blessings in the morning. One of them is who gives strength to the weary, not strength to the tired. And a lot of people think it's strength to the tired because hanoten le yayef koach, but it's not ayef koach, that's tired. It's yayef, it's weary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weary despair, like you've gone, and it really is the strength. We could, as all of us living in this exile right now, and exile, one of a definition I use for exile, because whether we live inside the land of Israel or outside the land of Israel, we're in exile right now. Exile, I would say, is the distance between who we are and where we should be, where we could be. Like really, like that place of synergy of all Jews living in peace and connectedness and collaboration in such a way that it shines a light into all the nations of the world, that it brings blessing to all the families of the earth, and everyone is elevated thereby. That's where we should be. And the distance between right here and right there is exile. So, and we've been going through that for a very long time. And so we're weary. And we're so weary, we don't even see the destination. Like a lot of us are just like, just stop the war. Just like stop the killing and the bleeding and the sorrow and the suffering and the assimilation and just stop that. And it's not that. That's a prerequisite, and so it's so much more. So that blessing is to keep us going when we're in despair, but it's also to keep an individual going when they're in despair. And so I would say that blessing with a lot of intent, just please, God, give me the strength. So it was not strength from within me. It was strength from out of me to be able to say to God in my prayers, like, I don't have enough to deal with this. And that's what a test is about, is saying, okay, you don't have enough. Well, I hate it when people say, God never gives anybody something they can't handle. He always gives them something they can't handle because he wants them to be able to grow into handling it. So, right.
Outside of your comfort zone.
outside of my capacity zone. But
Right.
it's within my reach is the point. So that's what I would say is, Hashem, you put me here, please grow me towards that. Like, and that would be it. Is that the strength comes from outside. Just say, Hashem, I'm here. I'm your servant. I'm just going to do what you want me to do. Put one foot in front of the other, but give me what I need to grow into this. I don't have what I need to face this challenge in front of me, but you do. So please hand it over, please.
So I want to hear about the humor aspect also, because you it's very clear in the 30 minutes that we've been known each other. You have a very good sense of humor about all this, and so I'm particularly curious about that. But did you have, because you talk about God and learning, pretty comfortably, but did you ever have what they call like a dark night of the soul, which is the loss of faith that could come with an event like this, and multiple events that you've had, in which a person either says something along the lines of there can't be a benevolent all power that runs this universe, because look at it, it's just so hard, it's just so lousy. God would have created a much better system than this one. Or God doesn't like me. He
Right.
really just does not like me, and I am being punished.
Right. So I'd like to offer another layer of what a dark night of the soul might be like. Because I often wondered, I first heard about night or a dark night of the soul vis-a-vis Mother Teresa, that
Yeah.
she went through a 20-year night. And I wondered, what is that? How did she go through 20 years of night and still do the work she did? Not evaluating Mother Teresa or what she did or if it was good or not. Like, there's all kinds of questions about that. But I wondered about it. And I also learned in the verses of the song that we sing Friday night, Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor who can be found, there is a verse there that says, Lo yichbeh b'layla nera, in the night her light doesn't go out.
Mm-hmm.
So in the dark night, she still has a pilot flame going. And physically, it means that in a time before matches and actual pilot lights, she knew, the woman of valor knew how to bank her fire at night, so she would still have an ember in the morning with which to start breakfast, right? So her light didn't go out at night. That's the mark of a good housewife. But the mark of a woman of valor is that internally her light doesn't go out. So, okay, so I never had my light go out. However, I would say that rather than saying God must hate me, never. And rather than saying how did God make mistakes like that to make a world, there must not be a God because look how this world's working, never that. However, there were definitely, let's just say, a fast day, not a major one because I always fast according to halacha, but let's say a minor one where I sort of feel like I should, and then I feel like, you know what, I should cause myself to suffer more. I think I probably did enough. Certainly in the first year or two after Donnie died, like, I don't really need this to bring me into feeling sad for the loss of the Beis HaMikdash or something like that, for the loss of the temple, for the loss of peace in the world. Like, I feel it. So I would say there was probably a loss of taste for some things like that, which I have regained. But I would definitely went through a loss of taste for some things. And it was even harder sometimes to daven with kavana. Like it took me a few years to be able to even be able to physically keep my eyes on the lines in the siddur. Like I could daven by heart, but to open up a siddur and focus enough to daven a whole shachris a whole morning service from the beginning to the end, was like, I didn't have the patience for it. It took a while to regain patience. Not spiritual patience altogether, like Sitzfleisch, the ability to sit and focus, took a while to come back. That did.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like it to me. That's a huge accomplishment, right by itself. And a lot of people are not functioning on that level long after the event.
Right.
So.
But that can feel like night for somebody who pulled so hard on faith and Hashem and tefillah, prayer, to get through all those hard years, to then on the other side of the death to feel like prayer takes too much energy. That's a night feeling. How will I do that? I could just talk to Hashem in my own words, but to be able to focus on lines in a book, it took a while to get it back. And that feels like night. You feel distant from where you'd like to be. And that is a night. So that's why I want to give that extra, like, it's a kind of a night. And you have to get through it. That's where I understood Mother Teresa a little bit more. Yes, you can still be involved in your holy work in the world and passionate about where you should be and the Jewish people should be. And at the same time, turn to the things that you're teaching other people and not be able to get enough juice out of them yourself. Yeah, that's a night. That's hard. That is a hard thing.
I'm going to ask you one more thing, and I'll open it up if anyone has another question or two, and then I'll give you a moment to pitch your organization. The Easterns have a concept of not being non-attached to things, that if there's tragedy, your suffering comes from an over-attachment to the things of this world, right? They're almost like trying to live beyond this world now. And therefore, if you want to end your suffering, you have to let go of the things that hold you here right now. I think we have an approach like that also. We have different terminology for it, and certainly we are meant to accept on a deep level. We have this concept of radical acceptance in the world as a cure for the great pains that we suffer through. You mentioned how anxiety and depression have skyrocketed in the last 20 years, especially. Do you think that this technique of putting into perspective those things that we are deeply attached to is a good idea, based on your experiences? And could it help to mitigate the suffering that people have in the world? Or do you feel like that's just not the Jewish way, and we are meant to absorb all of the feelings and to get through it, and not to sidestep it, but to live it and elevate ourselves nonetheless?
I think probably more the former than the latter, but I'll tell you a piece that came for me. So, and that is what our Jewish names. As Jewish people, we understand that our names are very important. So the names of the Jews, the first name of the Jewish people, are Hebrews. We're Ivris, we're Hebrews. And Ivri, Hebrew, means other-sider. Mm-hmm. And so I've worked a lot with the energy of being an other-sider. And like, for instance, that knowing that I'm an other-sider descended from Abraham and Sarah, the first other-siders who knew how to be alone in a world of pagans and be one God people, one ethical monotheists in a world of paganism. They had that strength to stand alone and stand apart in a scary space. I have that too. All Jews have that. And it would be that Ivri energy, that Hebrew energy, that allows one to be in that dark cave of judgment where other parents are judging you about having a mentally ill child and they don't even know what you're dealing with. And you have to stand in your Ivri energy and say, I know what I'm doing, and I know that it's good, and I don't care if you know or don't know what I'm doing. So I've dealt a lot with the Ivri energy, being able to stand apart and stand alone in strength, in faith, in solitude. And then when I was in the hospital with my grandson who was dying, and I did tell my daughter to go home for Shabbos. She couldn't nurse anymore. He had to be on a keto diet, so he wasn't allowed to have her breast milk because it was too sweet for that. They're trying to control his seizures with that. So I stayed in the hospital and I thought, okay, great. I know how to be an Ivri. I could be one walking Shabbos bubble in this hospital, and I know how to do Shabbos in the intensive care unit with the baby, right? And I stood there in my Ivri strength, and then I looked over at the crib with this little baby hooked up to everything, and I thought, but my grandson is over there dying. And so then I looked up at Hashem and I said, okay, Hashem, I'm on a very narrow spot on this bridge. If the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is not to be afraid. So I'm not afraid, because I know you have this, and I know you figured out why this needs to be, and why he's here, and why I'm here, and why they brought this baby into the world, everything. I know you know all this, but I'm telling you right now, it's a narrow spot and I need some help to walk through it. So as I said that to Hashem, I realized Ivri means other-sider, which I knew before. And I thought, maybe Ivri means the other side of the bridge. Like, I'm mamish an other-sider. Like, I'm from the next world. I am that person that belongs on the other side, totally blended into Hashem's energy, right? Because I've accomplished walking through all the narrow places in this world. And now on the other side, That's really my identity, is other sider of the bridge, but I'm still here in this world right now. So it's not a letting go of attachment. It's a knowing what my destination is. My destination is to be a bracha in the world, to connect with Hashem, right? So my destination is total dvekas, total connection to Hashem on every level, through every circumstance, in every way possible. And Hashem provides me with multiple workshops on multiple levels to see, how about if you connect this way? How about if you connect that way? Try this way, try that way. There's a lot of different contortions one might go through to try to connect Hashem in all those different circumstances. But for me, it's been really helpful to know that's my job. All I have to do is walk through this narrow place, which might be really painful. And I don't have to be scared of a thing, because the bridge isn't going to collapse. I'm going to the other side. All I have to do is walk through this narrow place. There's going to be a wide space ahead, and there's going to be a narrow space ahead of that. And I'm going to walk through the narrow and the wide, the breadth and the challenges again and again, until I walk through the final bridge, the final exit of the bridge, when my neshama is going to be expanded through, my soul will be expanded through everything that I've traversed in this world. And that's what I'm supposed to accomplish. So it helps me to keep my mind on the eye on the prize. Like, the prize is do what I'm supposed to do, stir up the energies in this world through my being a Jew, using Jewish processes in this world. Like, all the brachot that I say, all the prayers that I say, all the kind words that I say, all the good that I do, is about transforming all of humanity through my existence. It's a very thrilling thing to be a part of. And if Hashem wants to put me through more contortions, I'm not asking for tests, that's for sure. I hope they're over. I hope I get to do it in other ways. And maybe that's the transition into the organization that I run. But
yeah, go ahead.
Ways to do it, you know?
Yeah, let's hear about it.
So I did choose not to be the mother of suicide. After Donnie died, it would have been very easy to go into grief therapy spaces and groups and suicide prevention and blah, blah, blah. And I decided that's not me. That's not what I want to do. However, I do want to create a community that is warm and inspiring to support everyone going through everything hard. So that's why I created CORE. CORE is the center of our community that needs to be strengthened. So I didn't want to be on the outside edges trying to heal people from mental illness or bring them back from spiritual journeys that are untoward or whatever it is. I want to strengthen the very center core of our Jewish experience, our Jewish community. And I chose to focus on the women because Tzipora Heller, before she was Tzipora Heller Gottlieb, when I told her my plan, she said, that's great. I said, and in order to accomplish what you need, you're going to have to work with men, women, rabbis, and schools. I said, but you have to pick one. So I was like, okay, I pick women. I'm going to work with the women. And that's what I'm doing. To really strengthen the women who strengthen others. Because I want to create communities that are so warm that everyone born into them feels like they have a place and they want to stay in it. Even if they're going through an existential crisis, even if they're in emotional pain, they know that there's a community around them that's warm enough that will hold them. And I want it to be inspiring enough that we should never have to do kiruv anymore. Like, why should it be that we have to have programs? Why shouldn't the way we live together at the core of our community be so inspiring that people look at us and say, wow, look how you shine. I want a piece of that. And then we should go back to the warm. For sure, join me. I'll care for you. And I'll bring you into caring for others too. So that's the loop, the feedback loop that I want, is warm, inspiring, and warm and inspiring, that should engage all of us in a big, warm, inspiring hug. But I work with the women at the center of it. So CORE is to train the women who support other Jews, no matter what we do. So whether they're in Chevra Kadisha, whether they bury them, whether they birth them, the doulas, or the kala teachers, they help them get married, or the marriage mentors, or the shul rebbitzins, or the heads of Bikur Cholim, the societies for the caring for the sick, whatever it is, we support women who are supporting other Jews to really try to leverage our time and our energy to strengthen women who are strengthening others. So
okay, and how do people find it?
CoreTorah.org.
CORE Torah.org.
Right, CoreTorah.org.
Okay. So, Aliza, as I knew it would be, this was a very enlightening and inspiring conversation for me, and I'm sure for everyone who watches this. Speaking of blessings, I give you one to continue inspiring people through your work and making sense of the really difficult challenges that people go through in life. It's extremely valuable, I think. So thank you for being here, and I hope we'll be able to cross paths again and do more good work.
I hope so too. Can I tell you one Donnie sense of humor before we go?
Yes, yes.
So when he was in the psych ward, he tried ranch salad dressing, which he had never had before. It's dairy. It's not something that's usually found in a kosher home because it's, tricky with meat and dairy salad dressings. Anyway, he loved it. He asked me to buy it. I bought it. He took it out of the refrigerator after he got home. He said, Ima, before I was in the psych ward, I never had ranch salad dressing, but now I'm crazy about it. So,
yeah.
So just
Well,
the
next time, next time we'll talk about humor more. But
it's a raft to carry one through turbulent waters. It really is. So there's many rafts that you have to find, but that's one of them. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And we're going to be back next week at the same time with Dr. Bill Silvers, who is somebody who also went through a very different kind of experience, getting paralyzed through a freak pickleball accident of all things. And we'll hear his perspective on how he navigated that and other lessons that we can take.
And let's just say Rebecca also. One more thing for Rebecca.
Oh, yes.
We're creating a raft for Rebecca. Let's just send her our love, both of us and anyone else listening to this. That's what we do as the Jewish people. This is the chesed pulling. All of us have the opportunity here to have some kindness pulled out of us to build a raft for her. And I'm sure there's a link in the show notes.
Yes, there's a link in the YouTube description for her campaign. Any amount is extremely valuable. She is one of these people who is currently going through it, as we say, and could use all the help that we can give her. So that was the whole inspiration for doing this series, and that, of course, that is the right place to end.
Yeah, so financially, and also any prayer that anybody can offer, even right now, if you just want to say, please heal her, send her all the love and compassion and care and healing and energy and insight and friends and connections that she needs to move up and on with her healthy journey of health. Bezrat Hashem, God should guide her to good places.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank
we'll
you.
talk again.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Bye.
Bye.